Hey, welcome back. Thanks for being here tonight. Hollow Knight is a game filled with characters, each one carrying their own story, their own struggles, their own place in the fallen kingdom of Hallownest. Some are warriors, some are scholars, some are just trying to survive in a world that's already ended. Tonight we're going to go through every character's story, one by one, slowly and gently. Some stories are long and complex, others are brief and simple, but each one matters. Each one adds to the tapestry of Hallownest. Each one helps you understand what this kingdom was and what it became. You don't need to stay awake for all of them. That's not what this is for. If you drift off during someone's story, that's perfect. I'll keep talking and you can just let go. Let your breathing slow. Let your body sink into rest. Let these stories carry you gently towards sleep. Thank you for trusting me with these quiet hours. Let's begin with the characters of Hallownest, starting with you, the Knight. The Knight is who you play as, a small vessel made of void, returning to Hallownest for reasons even you don't fully understand. You have no voice, no gender, no name. You're simply the Knight, or the ghost, or the vessel. You were created in the abyss by the Pale King, one of thousands of attempts to create a being with no mind to think, no will to break, no voice to cry suffering. But you were discarded, deemed a failure, thrown back into the abyss with countless other vessels who weren't empty enough for the Pale King's purposes. You climbed out of the abyss somehow, escaped Hallownest, and wandered for years in lands beyond the kingdom. What you did during those years is never explained. Where you went, what you saw, how you survived. These are mysteries the game never answers. But something called you back to Hallownest. Some instinct, some purpose, some pull you couldn't resist. You returned to the kingdom that created and discarded you, arriving to find it in ruins, infected and dying. Throughout your journey you never speak, never express emotion through dialogue or facial expressions. Your mask remains blank, your body language minimal. But through your actions, through the choices you make, through the paths you take, you tell your own story. You help the bugs you encounter, or you ignore them. You collect every charm and explore every corner, or you rush toward your goal. You seek out every secret, or you focus only on your main objective. The Knight story is whatever you make it, but the framework is always the same. You're a discarded vessel returning to finish what your sibling couldn't, to succeed where the perfect vessel failed. The Hollow Knight is your sibling, the vessel that was chosen. Where you were discarded, they were selected. Where you were deemed impure, they were called perfect. The Pale King believed he had finally created a being with no mind to think, no will to break, no voice to cry suffering. The Hollow Knight was raised in the White Palace, trained by the Pale King himself, given a purpose that would define their entire existence, to contain the radiance, to seal away the infection, to save Hallownest through eternal imprisonment and suffering. The Pale King's plan was to seal the radiance inside the Hollow Knight, then chain the Hollow Knight inside the Temple of the Black Egg, locked away by 3 dreamers whose deaths would be required to break the seal. It was meant to be permanent, eternal, a solution that would last forever. But the plan failed because the Hollow Knight wasn't hollow. Despite the Pale King's best efforts, despite all his attempts to create a being without thought or feeling, the Hollow Knight developed an idea instilled. They looked up to the Pale King as a father. They felt something, thought something, wanted something. That tiny imperfection, That microscopic crack in their emptiness was enough. The Radiance found that crack and exploited it, slowly breaking free from her prison, leaking infection out into Hallownest, turning the Hollow Knight's eternal duty into eternal torture. When you finally reach the Temple of the Black Egg and break the seal, you find the Hollow Knight chained and suffering, their body leaking infection, their movements jerky and pained. They don't want to fight you. In fact, they try to help you. During the battle, the Hollow Knight stabs themselves, trying to end their own suffering, trying to help you defeat them. It's one of the most heartbreaking moments in the game. Watching this vessel, who was supposed to be empty, who was supposed to feel nothing, actively trying to die, trying to end the pain they've endured for so long. The Hollow Knight's story is a tragedy of expectations and failure, of a child given an impossible task, of a being created to be empty but cursed with the capacity to feel. They were the chosen one, the perfect vessel, the saviour of Hallownest. But perfection was impossible, and their imperfection doomed the kingdom they were meant to save. The Pale King is the architect of Hallownest's rise and fall, the worm who transformed himself into a bug, who built a kingdom and then destroyed it trying to save it. Before he was the Pale King, he was a worm, an ancient powerful being who arrived in the lands that would become Hallownest. He shed his worm form, died, and was reborn as a higher being in the shape of a bug, and used his power to expand the minds of the bugs living in these lands. Where once there were only simple creatures acting on instinct, the Pale King brought thought, civilization, purpose. He built the kingdom of Hallownest, created the White Palace, established a society with laws and culture and meaning. For a time, Hallownest thrived under his rule, but the Pale King's light, his expansion of minds, came at a cost. The Radiance, the Moth Tribe's forgotten god, was being erased from memory as bugs turned to worship the Pale King instead. The Radiance fought back, creating the infection to reclaim the minds that had been taken from her. The Pale King, faced with this threat, had made increasingly desperate decisions to save his kingdom. His first attempt was the seals placed throughout Hallownest, magical barriers meant to contain the infection. When those proved insufficient, he turned to more extreme measures. He created the vessels, thousands upon thousands of children born from himself and the White Lady, then thrown into the abyss to be killed by void and transformed into empty shells. The Pale King watched as his children died, as they fell into darkness, as they clawed over each other trying to escape. He was looking for one perfect vessel, one child empty enough to contain a god. The cost in lives, in suffering, in moral compromise was apparently acceptable to him. When he finally found the vessel he deemed perfect, the Hollow Knight, he raised them, trained them, and then sealed them away with the Radiance inside, locked in eternal torment to save his kingdom. But even this ultimate sacrifice wasn't enough. The Hollow Knight wasn't truly hollow, and the plan slowly failed. The Pale King, at some point before the game begins, disappeared. His fate is never explicitly stated, but evidence suggests he died in his sleep in the White Palace, possibly from the weight of his failures, possibly from despair at watching his kingdom fall despite everything he'd sacrificed. The Pale King's workshop in the White Palace shows his obsession with creating the perfect vessel, with saw blades and spikes and deadly traps designed to test his children, to find the one strong enough and empty enough for his purposes. His throne room contains his corpse, small and still, crown fallen beside him. The Pale King's story is one of a ruler who loved his kingdom so much that he committed atrocities to save it, who sacrificed his own children, his morality, his soul, and still failed. He's never presented as purely evil or purely good. He built something beautiful and destroyed it through his attempts to preserve it. He gave bugs the gift of thought and then filled those thoughts with infection and despair. The Pale King is Hallownest's creator and destroyer, its saviour and its doom, a character whose legacy is written in the ruins of everything he tried to protect. The White Lady is the Pale King's queen, the mother of all the vessels, a being of root and growth who made the choice to participate in the creation of thousands of children meant to die. She's found in the Queen's gardens, bound by roots of her own making, having sealed herself away in what seems like self-imposed penance for her role in the vessel's creation. When you meet her, she's gentle, soft-spoken, filled with regret but also with a strange acceptance of what was done. She calls the vessels born of God and void, acknowledges them as her children, and recognizes you as one of them. She speaks of the Pale King with something that might be love, might be respect, might be complicated grief. She doesn't defend what they did, but she doesn't fully condemn it either. She simply states what was, what is, and what might be. The White Lady bound herself in the Queen's gardens, removing herself from the world, perhaps as punishment, perhaps as protection. She speaks of a unity within herself that she fears, suggesting that without her bindings, she might do something dangerous, might create something she shouldn't. She gives you half of the King Soul charm, the other half found in the White Palace, and when combined, these pieces allow you to access the birthplace of the vessels in the abyss. The White Lady's story is quieter than the Pale King's, less active, but no less tragic. She made choices that led to the death of thousands of her children, and she lives with those choices in isolation and regret. She's a mother who participated in infanticide on a massive scale for the supposed greater good, and now she waits in her garden, bound and alone, for whatever ending comes. When you speak to her after obtaining Void Heart, she recognizes what you've become and calls you my child, with what seems like genuine affection and pride. The White Lady contains multitudes, regret and acceptance, love and horror, gentleness and complicity in atrocity. She's one of the most morally complex characters in Hallownest, a being who did terrible things for understandable reasons, and now lives with the consequences in quiet isolation. Hornet is the daughter of the Pale King and Hera the Beast, born as part of a bargain. Hera agreed to become a dreamer, to seal herself in sleep to maintain the Hollow Knight's prison, but only if the Pale King gave her a child. Hornet was that child, born of two kingdoms, belonging fully to neither. She's not a vessel, not void, not hollow. She's a living being with thoughts and feelings and will, raised in deepness but connected to the Pale King's legacy. When you first encounter Hornet, she's testing you, fighting you to see if you're strong enough for whatever lies ahead. She appears throughout your journey, watching, waiting, occasionally offering cryptic guidance. She speaks a phrase in the bug tongue of Hallownest that sounds to many players like "Git good," a line that has become one of the game's most famous moments, even if the words aren't English. The sentiment is unmistakable regardless of language. She's not going to coddle you, not going to make things easier, because the path ahead requires strength and skill and determination. Hornet knows about the vessels, about the plan, about what the night is and what they might need to do. She's one of the few characters who understands the full scope of Hallownest's tragedy. In the Sealed Siblings ending, Hornet joins you inside the black egg, sealed together with you and the Radiance, trapped in the same eternal prison that held the Hollow Knight. She doesn't do this blindly or without understanding. She knows what she's choosing, knows what it means, and does it anyway because it's necessary. In other endings, she survives, left to be one of the last witnesses to Hallownest's story. Hornet's role in Silksong, the sequel, suggests she has her own journey ahead, her own story beyond being the Pale King's daughter or Hallownest's protector. But in Hollow Knight, she's the guardian, the test, the one who ensures that whoever faces the infection is worthy of the attempt. She's sharp, skilled, determined, and deeply lonely. One of the last beings in Hallownest who remembers what the kingdom was and understands what it's become. Her relationship with the knight is complex. You're her sibling in a way, both children of the Pale King, but you're also fundamentally different. She's alive, you're void. She has a voice, you're silent. She has a future, you have a purpose. Hornet's story is about duty and isolation, about being the child who survived when thousands didn't, about protecting a kingdom that's already dead because someone has to remember, someone has to care, someone has to ensure the sacrifice meant something. Quirrell is a wandering scholar, a pilgrim who arrived in Hallownest around the same time as the knight, drawn by something he can't quite remember. When you first meet him, he's studying the ruins, fascinated by Hallownest's history, trying to piece together what happened to this fallen kingdom. He appears in various locations throughout your journey, always studying something, always pondering the mysteries of Hallownest. He's kind, thoughtful, curious, one of the few genuinely friendly voices you encounter. Quirrell's story is tied to Monomon the teacher, one of the three dreamers. He was Monomon's student and assistant, and she gave him a mask that protected him from the infection, but also made him forget his past, forget her, forget his purpose in Hallownest. He wandered for years, protected but lost, until something called him back to Hallownest. As you progress, Quirrell slowly pieces together fragments of memory, recognizing places, feeling connections he can't quite explain. When you reach the teacher's archives and prepare to fight Umu to access Monomon, Quirrell appears to help you. He breaks Umu's protective shell, making the fight possible, and in doing so he remembers. He remembers Monomon, remembers his duty, remembers why he's here. Yet after you defeat Monomon and break her seal, Quirrell is devastated. He's grateful that he forgot, grateful that he didn't have to carry the weight of knowing what would need to happen. Monomon chose to become a dreamer, chose to seal herself in sleep, knowing that one day someone would need to kill her to break the seal. Quirrell would have had to live with that knowledge, would have had to wait for the day when his teacher and friend would need to die. Forgetting was a mercy Monomon gave him. After Monomon's death, Quirrell can be found sitting by the blue lake, his nail planted in the ground beside him, looking out over the water. He talks about feeling at peace, about his journey being complete, about being ready to rest. Then he disappears, and his nail remains by the lake. The game never explicitly states what happened to Quirrell. Many players believe he walked into the lake, choosing to end his life now that his purpose was fulfilled. Others believe he simply moved on and left Hallownest, went to find a new purpose. The ambiguity is intentional, leaving Quirrell's final fate to interpretation. But his story is clear. He's a scholar who loved his teacher, who was protected from grief through forgetting, who helped fulfill a terrible duty, and who found peace in the end, whatever form that peace took. The Radiance is the moth tribe's god, the being whose light gave the moths purpose and identity before the Pale King arrived. When the Pale King expanded the minds of Hallownest's bugs, the moths turned away from the Radiance, forgot her, worshipped the new king instead. The Radiance, faced with being forgotten, with fading into nothing, fought back. She created the infection, a plague of light and madness that reclaimed the minds that had abandoned her. The infection turns bugs into mindless husks, fills their thoughts with light and rage, makes them attack anything that isn't infected. It's presented as a terrible thing, a plague destroying Hallownest, but from the Radiance's perspective, it's reclamation. These were her followers, her children, and they were taken from her. The infection is her attempt to be remembered, to exist, to matter. The Radiance isn't evil in a traditional sense. She's a god fighting for survival, for relevance, for the right to exist in the memories of those who once worshipped her. But her method of fighting back causes immense suffering, destroys an entire kingdom, turns living beings into empty husks. The Radiance is the final boss in most endings, a being of pure light fought in a dream realm, desperate and powerful and ancient. When you defeat her, you're not just saving Hallownest from the infection, you're erasing a god, finishing what the Pale King started, ensuring that the Radiance is truly forgotten. In the true ending, you unite with the void, become something powerful enough to challenge a god, and you destroy the Radiance completely, pulling her down into darkness, silencing her light forever. The Radiance's story is about the fear of being forgotten, about the desperate measures taken to survive, about the cost of memory and the violence of erasure. She's both victim and villain, both sympathetic and monstrous, a god who refused to fade quietly and took an entire kingdom down with her. The three dreamers are Lurien the Watcher, Monomon the Teacher, and Hera the Beast, of her three bugs who agreed to seal themselves in eternal sleep to maintain the locks on the Hollow Knight's prison. Each had their own reasons for accepting this duty, their own sacrifices, their own stories. Lurien the Watcher lived in his spire overlooking the City of Tears, devoted to the Pale King with absolute loyalty. He agreed to become a dreamer out of duty and love for his king, willing to sleep forever if it meant protecting Hallownest. Lurien's devotion to the Pale King bordered on worship. His spire is filled with telescopes pointed at the White Palace. His journals speak of the king with reverence and admiration. When the Pale King asked him to become a dreamer, Lurien accepted without hesitation, seeing it as the highest honour, the ultimate service he could provide. He sealed himself in sleep surrounded by his butler and his retainers, all of whom also chose to sleep, to wait, to serve even in dreams. When you kill Lurien to break his seal, you're ending a vigil that lasted for years, destroying the last service of a devoted follower to a dead king. Monomon the Teacher was a scholar, a researcher, someone who valued knowledge and understanding above all else. She agreed to become a dreamer not out of devotion to the Pale King, but out of understanding that it was necessary. Monomon approached the role analytically, practically, and seeing it as a solution to a problem even if it meant her own eternal imprisonment. She made preparations before sealing herself, gave Quirrell the mask that would protect him and make him forget, left her archives in order, ensured her research would survive even if she didn't. Monomon's choice was informed and deliberate, a sacrifice made with full understanding of what it meant and what it would cost. She knew that one day someone would need to kill her to break the seal, and she accepted that as part of the solution. Monomon's story is about the sacrifices scholars make for the greater good, about choosing duty over survival, about facing an impossible situation with logic and acceptance rather than emotion. Hera the Beast was the Queen of Deepnest, a kingdom that existed before the Pale King's arrival and maintained its independence even after Hallownest's rise. Hera agreed to become a dreamer only after the Pale King agreed to give her a child, Hornet. This wasn't devotion or duty or logical acceptance. This was a bargain, a trade, a political arrangement between two rulers. Hera wanted an heir, wanted to ensure Deepnest's legacy would continue, and she used the Pale King's desperation to secure that future. She became a dreamer knowing she would never see her daughter grow up, never rule Deepnest again, never wake from her sleep. But she ensured that Hornet would exist, would carry both kingdoms' blood. Ayam would be a bridge between Deepnest and Hallownest. Hera's story is about the sacrifices mothers make, about political manoeuvring even in the face of apocalypse, about ensuring legacy and continuity even at the cost of personal experience. When you kill Hera to break her seal, you're ending the sleep of a queen who traded her life for her daughter's existence, who made a cold political calculation that happened to be wrapped in maternal love. The three dreamers together represent different forms of sacrifice, devotion, logic, and bargaining. They sealed themselves away to maintain a solution that was always temporary, always flawed, always doomed to fail. Their deaths are necessary for you to progress, to reach the Hollow Night, to attempt to end the infection. You kill them in their sleep, break their seals, end their vigil. It's not presented as heroic or villainous, just necessary. The dreamers gave up their lives to buy Hallownest time, and when you kill them, you're acknowledging that the time they bought has run out, that a new solution is needed, that their sacrifice, while meaningful, wasn't enough. Elderbug is the first friendly character you meet in Hallownest, an old bug sitting on a bench in Dirtmouth, the small village above the ruins. He's lonely, tired, and surprised to see anyone new arrive in this dying place. Elderbug has watched Dirtmouth empty out as bugs either fled or descended into Hallownest and never returned. He's one of the last residents staying because he has nowhere else to go, because this is his home even if it's dying. When you first meet him, he warns you about Hallownest, tells you that everyone who goes down there either dies or comes back changed. He's not trying to stop you, just trying to prepare you, trying to be kind in a world that's forgotten kindness. As you progress and return to Dirtmouth, Elderbug is always there, always happy to see you, always surprised you're still alive. He comments on how the town is changing, how other bugs are starting to arrive, how there's life in Dirtmouth again for the first time in years. If you sit on the bench next to him, he talks about his loneliness, about watching everyone leave, about the weight of being the last one who remembers what Dirtmouth used to be. Elderbug's story is small and quiet, but it's one of the most human in the game. He's not a warrior or a scholar or a ruler. He's just an old bug who stayed when everyone else left, who offers kindness to a silent night, who finds hope in small changes. He represents the ordinary citizens of Hallownest, the ones who weren't part of grand plans or ancient bargains, who just lived their lives and tried to survive when everything fell apart. Elderbug's gentle presence at the start and throughout your journey makes Dirtmouth feel like home, makes your returns to the surface feel like coming back to someone who cares whether you live or die. Cornifer is a cartographer who travels through Hallownest, mapping its tunnels and chambers, humming a distinctive tune that lets you know he's nearby. His wife Iselda runs a shop in Dirtmouth, where she sells the maps Cornifer makes. Cornifer is cheerful, dedicated to his work. and seemingly unbothered by the dangers of Hallownest. He's always excited to meet another traveller, always happy to sell you a map of the area, always ready to move on to the next unmapped region. He talks about the beauty of Hallownest's architecture, the fascinating geography, the interesting creatures, treating the ruins like a professional challenge rather than a horror. Cornifer's passion for cartography keeps him going into places that would terrify most bugs. He and his maps are essential for navigating Hallownest's sprawling interconnected regions. Iselda, his wife, is more practical and grounded. She worries about Cornifer, misses him when he's gone for long periods, but supports his work because she knows it's his passion. She sells his maps, sells quills and compasses, and offers advice and commentary on your journey. Iselda is sharp, observant, and not afraid to speak her mind. She comments on the various charms you're wearing. He recognises their significance and shares her thoughts on Hallownest's history and current state. The relationship between Cornifer and Iselda is one of the few genuinely healthy, loving relationships in Hallownest. They support each other, miss each other, work together toward shared goals. In a game filled with tragedy and broken families, Cornifer and Iselda represent something normal and good, a reminder that love and partnership can exist even in dying kingdoms. The nailsmith is a master craftsman living in the City of Tears, dedicated to forging the perfect nail. When you meet him, he's been working alone for years, honing his craft, waiting for a warrior worthy of his greatest work. He offers to upgrade your nail, improving it through multiple stages, each one requiring payment and rare materials. The nailsmith is passionate about his work, speaking of nails with reverence and artistry, seeing weapon forging as an art form rather than just a trade. As you bring him better materials and he creates stronger nails, his excitement grows. He's finally able to create what he's always dreamed of, to push his skills to their absolute limit. When you bring him the final materials needed for the pure nail, the ultimate upgrade, the nailsmith creates his masterpiece. He's ecstatic, fulfilled, complete. He's achieved what he set out to do, created the perfect nail, reached the pinnacle of his art, and then he asks you to kill him. He believes he's reached the peak of his existence, that nothing he does from this point forward will match this achievement, that his life's purpose is complete. He wants to die at his highest point, to end his story with his greatest success rather than decline into lesser work. You have a choice here. You can kill him, granting his request, ending his life at his moment of triumph. Or you can refuse, spare him, walk away. If you spare him, the nailsmith is initially confused, then grateful. He realizes there's more to life than a single achievement, that there's value in continuing even after reaching a peak. Later you can find him in Dirtmouth with Shio, one of the nail masters, having found new purpose in learning painting, in exploring a different art form, in building a relationship. The nailsmith story is about the danger of tying your entire identity to a single goal, about the importance of finding new purposes, about the choice between ending at your peak or continuing into the unknown. Mila is a miner you find in the Crystal Peak, singing while she works, cheerful and friendly despite being alone in dangerous tunnels. When you first meet her, she's not infected, just a bug doing her job, happy to have company, excited about the crystals she's finding. She talks about her work, about the beauty of the crystals, about her simple hopes and dreams. As you progress through the game and return to Crystal Peak, Mila slowly becomes infected. Her dialogue changes, becomes more confused, more focused on mining, less coherent. Her song continues, but it becomes sadder, more desperate. Eventually she's fully infected, hostile, attacking you on sight. You have to kill her or avoid her. There's no way to save Myla, no cure for her infection, no happy ending to her story. She's just a miner who was in the wrong place, and who got infected like thousands of others, who lost herself to the Radiance's light. Myla's story is one of the most heartbreaking in the game because of its simplicity. She's not involved in grand plans or ancient conflicts. She's just a person trying to live her life, and the infection takes her anyway. Her slow transformation, her gradual loss of self, her eventual hostility, it's a microcosm of what happened to all of Hallownest, shown through one individual bug. Players often avoid killing infected Myla even when she attacks, leaving her alive in the tunnels, still mining, still singing her broken song. It doesn't save her, it doesn't change anything, but it feels wrong to end her story with violence when she was just a miner who wanted to find pretty crystals and sing while she worked. Cloth is a warrior from outside Hallownest, a cicada who came to the kingdom seeking glory and adventure. She's brave, enthusiastic, and somewhat naive about the danger she's facing. Cloth dreams of dying a warrior's death, of going down fighting, of having a story worth telling. When you first meet her, she's excited to find another traveller, another warrior, someone who might understand her quest for glory. She appears in various locations throughout Hallownest, always looking for a good fight, always ready to test herself against dangerous foes. Cloth can help you in the fight against the traitor lord in the Queen's Gardens if you've met her at enough locations beforehand. She jumps into the battle, fights alongside you, and if the traitor lord isn't defeated quickly enough, Cloth is killed, achieving the warrior's death she always wanted. She dies happy, fulfilled, having gone down fighting a worthy opponent. If you defeat the traitor lord before he can kill Cloth, she survives but is disappointed. She wanted that glorious death, wanted to die in battle, and surviving feels like a failure to her. Later you can find her in Dirtmouth, having given up on finding her warrior's death, settling into a quieter life. She's not entirely happy about it, but she's accepting it, learning to find value in survival rather than glorious death. Cloth's story is about the romanticization of violence, about seeking death as validation, about the difference between the glory of battle in stories and the reality of survival. She came to Hallownest with dreams of heroic sacrifice, and depending on your actions, she either achieves that dream or learns to live without it. Tiso is an arrogant warrior who comes to Hallownest seeking to prove himself in the Colosseum of Fools. He's dismissive of you when you first meet him, confident in his own abilities, certain that he'll achieve glory in the arena. Tiso talks big, acts tough, and heads off to the Colosseum to make his mark, but Tiso never makes it to the main arena. He dies in the tunnels beneath the Colosseum, killed by creatures he underestimated. You find his body later, thrown out with the other failed challengers, his shield broken, his dreams of glory ended in an unmarked death in the dark. Tiso's story is brief and brutal, a reminder that confidence without skill leads to death, that Hallownest doesn't care about your dreams or your ego. He wanted to be a champion, wanted to prove himself, and he died alone in the dark, and as just another corpse in a kingdom full of them. His death is unheroic, unmourned, unremarkable. Tiso represents all the warriors who came to Hallownest thinking they were special, thinking they were different, thinking they would succeed where others failed, and learned too late that the kingdom doesn't care about confidence or ambition. Zote is perhaps the most pathetic character in Hallownest, a self-proclaimed knight who is actually completely incompetent. He carries a nail made of shellwood that can't actually hurt anything, wears armour that doesn't protect him, and constantly gets into situations he can't handle. You first encounter Zote in Greenpath, where he's trapped by a Vengefly king about to be eaten. You can save him or leave him to die. If you save him, Zote shows no gratitude, instead claiming he had everything under control and didn't need your help. This pattern repeats throughout the game. Zote gets into trouble. You save him. He claims he didn't need saving and insults you for interfering. He spouts precepts, rules for life that are mostly nonsensical or actively bad advice, treating them as profound wisdom. Zote is delusional, arrogant, and completely lacking in self-awareness. If you save him enough times, Zote makes it to Dirtmouth and becomes the object of Bretta's affections. He doesn't actually do anything to earn this, doesn't reciprocate her feelings, doesn't even seem to notice her devotion. He just exists, and Bretta projects all her romantic fantasies onto him. Zote also appears in the Colosseum of Fools if you've saved him, where he somehow survives the trials despite his complete lack of combat ability. It's never explained how he manages this, adding to the absurdity of his character. In Bretta's dreams, you can fight Grey Prince Zote, a powerful, idealized version of Zote that represents how Bretta sees him. Strong, heroic, worthy of admiration. The contrast between Grey Prince Zote and the real Zote is the joke. The real Zote is useless, but in dreams, in stories, in the fantasies of someone who wants to believe in heroes, he becomes something impressive. Zote's story is comedic relief in a game filled with tragedy, but it's also a commentary on delusion, on the gap between self-perception and reality, on how some people survive through sheer oblivious luck while more competent bugs die. Zote is annoying, useless, and somehow keeps surviving, which might be the most realistic part of his character. Bretta is a shy bug you rescue from the fungal wastes, where she's trapped and surrounded by infection. When you save her, she returns to Dirtmouth and moves into a house, where she begins writing stories and drawing pictures. Initially, these stories are about you, the knight, romanticizing your adventures, imagining you as a heroic figure. Her house fills with drawings of you, diary entries about you, are fantasies about your relationship. It's sweet but also slightly uncomfortable, this lonely bug projecting all her romantic desires onto a silent vessel who never asked for this attention. If you save Zote and he comes to Dirtmouth, Bretta's attention immediately shifts from you to him. Suddenly all her stories are about Zote, all her drawings feature Zote, all her romantic fantasies centre on this arrogant, incompetent bug who doesn't even notice her. Here Bretta's devotion to Zote is completely one-sided. She writes about him as a hero, imagines him as strong and brave, creates an entire fantasy relationship that exists only in her mind. If you defeat Grey Prince Zote enough times in her dreams, Bretta becomes disillusioned. She realizes that her fantasy doesn't match reality, that Zote isn't the hero she imagined, that she's been in love with an idea rather than a person. She leaves Dirtmouth, heading out to find her own adventures, to become the hero of her own story rather than waiting for someone else to be heroic for her. Bretta's story is about loneliness, about the fantasies people create to cope with isolation, about the danger of projecting desires onto others, and ultimately about the importance of finding your own path rather than waiting for someone else to give your life meaning. She starts as someone who needs rescuing, becomes someone who obsesses over her rescuers, and ends as someone who rescues herself by leaving to find her own purpose. The Mantis Lords are the rulers of the Mantis village, 3 warriors who maintain their tribe's honour and independence even as Hallownest fell. The Mantises are a proud warrior culture, valuing strength, skill and honour above all else. They made a treaty with the Pale King, agreeing to guard the borders of Deepnest in exchange for being left alone to maintain their own society. When the infection came, the Mantis Lords and their tribe resisted it, refusing to let the Radiance's light corrupt them. They sealed the entrance to Deepnest, preventing infected creatures from spreading into their village, and maintained their discipline and culture through sheer will and strength. When you challenge the Mantis Lords, you're not fighting enemies, you're participating in a ritual. The Mantis Lords test you, fight you to see if you're worthy of their respect. If you defeat them, they bow to you. Ye acknowledge your strength and open the path to Deepnest. The Mantis warriors throughout the village, who were hostile before, now respect you and let you pass without fighting. The Mantis Lords represent honour in a world that's lost it, tradition maintained through discipline, strength used not for conquest but for protection. They're one of the few groups in Hallownest that haven't fallen to infection, haven't abandoned their principles, haven't collapsed into chaos. Their story is about the power of culture and discipline, about maintaining identity in the face of apocalypse, about the respect that comes from strength tempered with honour. The Traitor Lord is the 4th Mantis Lord, the one who broke from the tribe and betrayed everything the Mantises stood for. When the infection came, the Traitor Lord accepted it, along with some followers, choosing power over honour. They were exiled to the Queen's Gardens, where they live as outcasts, infected and hostile. The Traitor Lord is larger and more powerful than the other Mantis Lords, but that power came at the cost of honour, identity and belonging. The fight against the Traitor Lord is more brutal than the fight against the Mantis Lords. There's no ritual here, no respect, just violence. The Traitor Lord and their followers attack with infected rage, having abandoned the discipline that defined Mantis culture. When you defeat the Traitor Lord, there's no bow of respect, no acknowledgement of your strength. They just die. Another infected creature destroyed, their betrayal ending in an unmarked death in a garden that's become a graveyard. The Traitor Lord story is about the cost of betrayal, about choosing power over principle, about how infection doesn't just corrupt the body but destroys identity and culture. They gained strength, but lost everything that made that strength meaningful. Dung Defender, whose real name is Ogrim, is one of the 5 great knights who served the Pale King. He's found in the royal waterways, still guarding his post, still loyal to his king, still maintaining his duty even though the kingdom has fallen and the king is dead. Dung Defender is enthusiastic, honourable, and genuinely happy to meet a worthy opponent. When you fight him, he's excited, treating the battle as a test of strength rather than a fight to the death. He laughs, he praises your skill. He's having fun even while trying to defeat you. After you beat him, Dung Defender is impressed and respectful, acknowledging your strength and allowing you to pass. He talks about the old days, about serving the Pale King, about the other great knights, about the glory of Hallownest before the fall. There's sadness in his words, but also pride. He's proud of what Hallownest was, proud of his service, proud to have been part of something great, even if it's gone now. If you find all the Great Knight statues and return to Dung Defender, you can access a hidden area where you fight him again in a dream, facing a memory of Ogrim at his peak, when he was younger and stronger and Hallownest was still alive. This dream fight is harder, more intense, showing what the great knights were capable of in their prime. After this fight, Dung Defender reflects on his fallen comrades, on the passage of time, on the weight of being the last one left. He's the only great knight still alive and sane, still maintaining his post, still believing in the kingdom he served. Dung Defender's story is about loyalty that outlasts its purpose, about maintaining duty when there's no one left to serve, about finding joy and honour even in a fallen world. He's one of the most genuinely good characters in Hallownest, someone who chose to stay and guard even when he could have left. Who maintains his principles not because anyone is watching, but because that's who he is. The 5 great knights were the Pale King's elite warriors, his most trusted defenders. Besides Dung Defender, there was Isma, who created the acidic waters in the royal waterways and whose grove you can find, though she's long dead. There was Zima, the Grey Mourner, a knight from a foreign land who fell in love with the daughter of the traitor lord and now mourns her lost love, who is asking you to deliver a flower to her lover's grave. There was Hegemol, whose armour was stolen by a maggot who used it to try to protect their smaller siblings, becoming the false knight you encounter early in the Forgotten Crossroads. And there was Drya, a fierce warrior fiercely loyal to the White Lady, who gave her life defending the Queen's gardens from the Mantis traitors. Each of the great knights has their own story of service and loss, of dedication to Hallownest and the cost of that dedication. Isma died protecting the kingdom, her body becoming part of the acidic defences. Zima survived but lost her love, spending her days in grief and memory. Hegemol's fate is unknown, his armour stolen, his identity erased. Drya fell in battle, her sacrifice largely unwitnessed and unrecorded. Only Dung Defender remains active, still fighting, still guarding, still loyal. The 5 great knights represent the best of Hallownest, Biasmu, the warriors who served with honour and skill, who gave everything for their kingdom. Their stories are scattered throughout Hallownest in hidden areas, dream dialogues, and environmental storytelling, piecing together a picture of what the kingdom's defenders were like before the fall. The last stag is an ancient creature, the last of the stag beetles who once provided transportation throughout Hallownest. When you first meet him, he's alone in a forgotten station, believing he's the last of his kind, that all the other stags are dead, that the network of stag stations throughout Hallownest is abandoned and useless. He's melancholy, resigned to his loneliness, but still willing to help you if you need transportation. As you explore Hallownest and unlock more stag stations, the last stag becomes more energetic, more hopeful. He's excited to use the old routes again, to travel the network he thought was dead, to have a purpose beyond waiting alone in the dark. He talks about the old days, about when the stations were full of travellers, about the pride stags took in their work. There's a hidden stag nest you can find, filled with the shells of dead stags, confirming that the last stag really is the last. When you show him this nest, he's sad but also grateful. He knows for certain now that he's alone, but he also knows that you cared enough to show him, to let him see where his kind ended. The last stag's story is about loneliness and purpose, about being the last of your kind, about finding meaning in service even when everything you knew is gone. He represents all the creatures of Hallownest who survived the fall, but lost their communities, their families, their entire species. He's alone, but he keeps going, keeps serving, keeps travelling the old routes because that's what stags do, even when there's only one stag left to do it. The Grimm Troupe is a travelling circus that arrives in Hallownest if you light a specific torch, summoning them from wherever they exist between performances. The troupe is led by Grimm, a mysterious figure who speaks in riddles and poetry, who offers you a quest to collect flames, scattered throughout Hallownest. Grimm is charming, theatrical, dangerous, and completely alien to Hallownest's culture. He's not from this kingdom, not bound by its rules, not affected by its infection. The Grimm Troupe exists outside normal reality, appearing and disappearing, performing their ritual across different lands and times. The ritual Grimm offers involves collecting flames to feed the Grimm child, a small creature that grows stronger as you gather more flames. Eventually you face Grimm in battle, a dance-like fight where he tests your skill while maintaining his theatrical flair. After defeating Grimm, you face Nightmare King Grimm, a more powerful version accessed through dreams, one of the hardest bosses in the game. The Grimm Troupe's ritual is a cycle of death and rebirth, with Grimm dying and being reborn through the Grimm child, continuing the troupe's existence across time and space. You can choose to complete the ritual, allowing this cycle to continue, or you can banish the troupe with Broom's help, ending their presence in Hallownest. Neither choice is presented as right or wrong, just different outcomes to a ritual that's been repeating for ages. The Grimm Troupe story is about cycles and performance, about rituals that transcend individual lives, about the difference between Hallownest's permanent death and the troupe's eternal rebirth. They're outsiders who bring colour and danger and mystery to a dying kingdom, a reminder that there are forces and stories beyond Hallownest's borders. This seer is an ancient moth who lives in the resting grounds, one of the last of her tribe, keeper of memories and dreams. She gives you the Dream Nail, a weapon that allows you to enter dreams, read thoughts, and access hidden areas. The seer is old, tired, and deeply sad. She remembers when the Moth tribe worships the Radiance, before the Pale King came, before her people forgot their god. She's watched her entire culture fade, watched the Radiance be forgotten, and then return as infection, watched Hallownest rise and fall. The seer speaks in cryptic terms about dreams and memory, about the power of the Dream Nail, about the essence you collect from dream warriors and bosses. As you bring her more essence, she shares more of the Moth tribe's history, more about the Radiance, more about what was lost when the Pale King expanded minds and took worship for himself. This seer is not bitter exactly, but she's mournful, carrying the weight of her tribe's erasure. When you collect enough essence, the seer gives you the awoken Dream Nail, a more powerful version that can break through stronger barriers. Eventually, if you collect all the essence, the seer completes her purpose and fades away, ascending to join her tribe in whatever comes after death. The seer's story is about being the last keeper of a forgotten culture, about maintaining memory when everyone else has moved on, about the loneliness of being the only one who remembers. She gives you the tools to access dreams and memories, making you a keeper of sorts as well, passing on the responsibility of remembering to someone who might actually be able to do something with that knowledge. The Snail Shamans are a group of ancient snails who study soul, the magical energy that powers spells in Hallownest. You meet them in various locations, and they teach you spells and upgrades, expanding your magical abilities. The Snail Shamans are peaceful, scholarly, dedicated to understanding soul and its applications. They speak slowly, thoughtfully, treating magic as a subject of study rather than just a weapon. The Snail Shamans represent the intellectual side of Hallownest, the scholars and researchers who pursued knowledge for its own sake. They're not warriors or rulers or victims of grand tragedies. They're just teachers, passing on their knowledge to anyone willing to learn, maintaining their studies even as the kingdom falls around them. Lem is a relic seeker who sets up shop in the City of Tears and buying artifacts and relics from Hallownest's past. He's grumpy, obsessed with history, frustrated by how much has been lost and forgotten. Lem pays you for the various relics you find throughout Hallownest, and his dialogue reveals his passion for preserving history, for understanding what Hallownest was before the fall. He's dismissive of people who don't care about history, who treat relics as junk, who let the past be forgotten. Lem's shop is filled with the artifacts you sell him, each one a piece of Hallownest's story, each one something he's preserving for a future that might never come. Lem's story is about the importance of remembering, about fighting against the erasure of history, about the frustration of being one of the few who cares about preservation when everything is falling apart. Sly is a shopkeeper in Dirtmouth who also happens to be the master of the 3 nail masters. When you first arrive in Dirtmouth, Sly is missing, and you find him in the forgotten crossroads, asleep and surrounded by infection. When you wake him with the dream nail, he returns to Dirtmouth and opens his shop, selling various items and upgrades. Sly is cheerful, business-minded, and surprisingly skilled with a nail despite his small size and shopkeeper demeanour. If you complete certain challenges, you can fight Sly in the God Home, where he reveals his true combat abilities, moving with speed and skill that rivals any warrior in Hallownest. Sly trained 3 students who became the Nail Masters, Sheo, Oro and Matto. Each Nail Master lives in isolation, having mastered different aspects of nail combat, and each can teach you a powerful nail art if you find them and prove yourself worthy. Sheo lives in Greenpath, having given up combat to pursue painting, finding peace in art rather than violence. Oro lives by Kingdom's Edge, still training, still fighting, still dedicated to perfecting his combat skills. Matto lives in the Howling Cliffs, maintaining his practice, honouring his master's teachings. The 3 Nail Masters represent different paths after mastering combat. Sheo chose peace and art. Oro chose continued dedication to combat. Matto chose balance and tradition. Together with Sly, they represent the martial tradition of Hallownest, the passing of skills from master to student, the different ways warriors find meaning in their abilities. The Hive Knight is the guardian of the hive, a hidden area in Kingdom's Edge where bees produce honey and maintain their society. The hive is one of the few places in Hallownest that's still functioning, still organised, still maintaining its purpose. The bees are not infected, protected by their isolation and their dedication to the hive. The Hive Knight is their protector, a powerful warrior who challenges you when you enter the hive's inner chambers. The fight is honourable, a test of strength to see if you're worthy of accessing the hive's treasures. After you defeat the Hive Knight, you can take the Hive Blood Charm, which slowly regenerates your health, a gift from the hive's magic. The Hive Knight's story is brief but significant. They represent duty and protection, a guardian who maintains their post, who protects their community, who fights not out of infection or madness but out of purpose. The hive is a reminder that not all of Hallownest fell, that some communities maintain their structure and identity, that isolation and dedication can preserve what openness and ambition destroyed. The Collector is a strange creature living in the Tower of Love, obsessed with collecting living bugs and preserving them in jars. The tower is filled with these jars, each containing a bug trapped in stasis, neither alive nor dead, just preserved. The Collector believes they're protecting these bugs, keeping them safe from the infection, saving them from the dangers of Hallownest. But the collector's protection is imprisonment, their love is possession, their salvation is a living death. When you fight the collector, they release the bugs from jars to attack you, using their collection as weapons, never understanding that what they're doing is wrong. The collector's story is about the danger of obsessive love, about protection that becomes imprisonment, about the fine line between saving and trapping. They genuinely believe they're helping, genuinely think they're doing good, which makes their actions more disturbing than if they were simply malicious. The Soul Master is the leader of the Soul Sanctum, a group of scholars who studied soul magic in the City of Tears. When the infection came, the Soul Master became obsessed with finding a cure, with using soul to fight back against the radiance. His experiments became increasingly unethical, using living bugs as test subjects, and draining their soul, killing them in pursuit of knowledge and power. The Soul Sanctum is filled with the corpses of his victims, bugs who were experimented on, drained, discarded. The Soul Master himself became twisted by his experiments, his body warped, his mind obsessed, his original noble goal corrupted into mad science. When you fight him, he's powerful, using advanced soul magic, but he's also clearly insane, rambling about his research, about the infection, about his need to understand and control. After you defeat the Soul Master, you can fight his dream version, Soul Tyrant, who represents what he became at his worst, fully consumed by his obsession. The Soul Master's story is about how the pursuit of knowledge without ethics leads to atrocity, about how desperation can corrupt noble intentions, about the danger of treating people as resources in pursuit of a greater good. He wanted to save Hallownest, wanted to cure the infection, but his methods destroyed as many lives as the infection itself. Nosk is a creature that lives in Deepnest, a shapeshifter that lures prey by taking the form of things they recognize. When you encounter Nosk, it initially appears as another vessel, as a reflection of yourself, leading you deeper into Deepnest. Eventually you reach Nosk's lair, filled with the shells of its victims. And the creature reveals its true form, a horrifying spider-like thing that was wearing the vessel's shape like a mask. Nosk is pure predator, no dialogue, no personality beyond hunger and mimicry. It represents the dangers of Deepnest, the creatures that existed before Hallownest and will exist after. The things that don't care about kingdoms or infection or grand plans, that just hunt and kill and survive. Nosk's story is minimal, but its presence is significant. It shows that Hallownest's dangers aren't all related to the infection, that there are ancient horrors that predate the Pale King, that some threats are just natural predators doing what predators do. The God-Seeker is a bug from a distant land who came to Hallownest seeking gods to worship. She's found in the royal waterways, trapped in a cocoon, and when you free her with the Dream Nail, she takes you to Godhome, a realm within dreams where you can fight stronger versions of every boss in the game. The God-Seeker is obsessed with gods, with power, with finding beings worthy of worship. She sees the night as a potential god, especially after you defeat powerful enemies and prove your strength. Godhome is the God-Seeker's creation, a place where she can test and worship gods, where she can witness divine power. The God-Seeker's dialogue is formal, reverent, treating combat as religious ritual. She speaks of gods ascending, of power proving divinity, of the need to witness and worship strength. In the Godmaster endings, the God-Seeker's worship has consequences. If you defeat the Radiance in Godhome, the infection is drawn into the Dream Realm, and depending on whether you have Void Heart equipped, either the God-Seeker contains the infection, or it escapes into the physical world through her. The God-Seeker's story is about the danger of worship, about how seeking gods can create or empower them, about the responsibility that comes with witnessing and elevating power. She came to Hallownest looking for gods and found them, but her worship and her rituals have real consequences, affecting not just dreams, but reality itself. There are so many other characters in Hallownest, each with their own small stories. Salubra, the charm collector who's lonely and excited to meet someone interested in charms. Leg Eater, who sells fragile charms and has a strange relationship with Divine of the Grim Troop. Gigi, who can summon your shade for a fee, helping you recover from deaths. The Mask Maker, who speaks in riddles about identity and faces, who sees the truth beneath masks. Millabelle, the banker who steals your money if you deposit too much, fleeing to the pleasure house. Marissa, the singer in the pleasure house whose voice you can hear echoing through empty halls. Revek, the gatekeeper in the City of Tears who talks about the Pale King's greatness. Grubfather, who asks you to rescue his children, the grubs trapped throughout Hallownest, and who does something disturbing with them after you rescue them all. Bardoon, the ancient caterpillar in Kingdom's Edge who speaks of the Pale King's transformation from worm to bug. Moss Prophet, who worships the infection as salvation, seeing the Radiance's light as divine. Willow, who lives in the Queen's Station and asks you to bring her delicate flowers. Eternal Emilitia, who guards the graves in the resting grounds and speaks of love and loss. Each of these characters adds depth to Hallownest, fills in pieces of the world, shows different perspectives on the kingdom's rise and fall. Some characters are tragic, some are comic relief, some are mysterious, some are mundane. But each one matters, like each one contributes to the feeling that Hallownest was a real place with real people, not just a backdrop for your adventure. The game never forces you to care about these characters, never makes their stories mandatory. You can rush through Hallownest, fight the bosses, reach the ending, and miss most of these stories entirely. But if you take the time to explore, to talk to everyone, to piece together their histories and motivations, your Hallownest becomes so much more than a series of combat challenges. It becomes a kingdom full of people who lived and loved and struggled and failed, who made choices that seemed right at the time, who tried to survive in impossible circumstances. The beauty of Hollow Knight's storytelling is that it trusts you to care, trusts you to explore, trusts you to piece things together without spelling everything out. The characters don't give you their complete backstories in exposition dumps. They mention things in passing, leave clues in their environments, reveal themselves through their actions and choices. You have to work to understand them, have to pay attention, have to think about what their words and behaviours mean. And that work makes the stories more meaningful, makes the characters more real, makes Hallownest feel like a place that existed before you arrived and will continue in some form after you leave. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, now think about these characters if you want. Think about Elderbug sitting on his bench, waiting for travellers who might never come. Think about Quirrell finding peace by the blue lake after a lifetime of wandering. Think about Myla singing in the crystal mines, her voice getting sadder as the infection takes her. Think about the Hollow Knight chained in darkness, suffering for a kingdom that's already dead. Think about Hornet, watching over ruins, protecting a legacy that might not be worth protecting. Think about all the small bugs trying to survive, trying to find meaning, trying to maintain hope in a world that's ending. Or don't think about them at all. Let these stories fade into the background as you relax, as your breathing slows, as sleep comes closer. The characters of Hallownest will continue their stories whether you're thinking about them or not. They'll keep existing in that fallen kingdom, in that beautiful, tragic, haunting world. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the real story of Hollow Knight isn't about saving the kingdom or defeating the infection or achieving the true ending. Maybe it's about all these individual lives, all these small stories, all these characters trying to find meaning in a world that's lost its purpose. Hallownest is a kingdom of stories, and every character is a storyteller whether they know it or not. The Pale King told a story of civilization and progress, and that story ended in atrocity and failure. The Radiance told a story of memory and worship, and that story became infection and madness. The Hollow Knight told a story of duty and sacrifice, and that story became eternal suffering. Hornet tells a story of protection and loneliness, of being the last guardian of something that might not deserve guarding. Quirrell told a story of curiosity and discovery, of finding peace after a lifetime of searching. The Mantis Lords tell a story of honour maintained through discipline, of culture surviving through strength. Dung Defender tells a story of loyalty that outlasts its purpose, of maintaining duty when there's no one left to serve. Every character in Hallownest is telling their story through their actions, their choices, their words, their silences. And you, the Knight, are telling a story too. You're telling a story of return, of a discarded vessel coming back to finish what the Chosen One couldn't. You're telling a story of exploration, of discovering a fallen kingdom piece by piece. You're telling a story of choice, of deciding which ending to pursue, which characters to help, which paths to take. Your story is silent, wordless, expressed through action rather than dialogue. But it's still a story, still meaningful, still part of Hallownest's tapestry. The game never tells you what your story means. It never explains why you return to Hallownest. Never clarifies what you're thinking or feeling. You're a blank slate, a vessel, empty of voice and expression. But through your choices, through the paths you take, through the characters you interact with, you create meaning. You decide what your story is. Are you a hero saving Hallownest from the infection? Are you a destroyer, killing everyone in your path to achieve your goal? Are you an explorer, curious about this fallen kingdom? Are you a child returning to confront the father who discarded you? The game supports all these interpretations and more, leaving your story open to your own understanding. And maybe that's the most important thing about Hollow Knight's characters. They're not just NPCs, not just quest givers or shopkeepers or boss fights. They're people, or at least they feel like people, with their own motivations and histories and futures. They exist independently of you, even have their own stories that continue whether you interact with them or not. Hallownest feels alive, or at least it feels like it was alive once, because of these characters, because of their stories, because of the way they inhabit this world and make it feel real. As you lie here tonight, letting sleep come closer, letting your thoughts slow down, letting your body relax, remember that stories continue even when we're not paying attention. The characters of Hallownest will keep existing in that game, in that world, in the memories of everyone who's played it. Elderbug will keep sitting on his bench, the last stag will keep travelling his routes, Hornet will keep watching over the ruins, The Hollow Knight will keep suffering in their chains until someone breaks the seal. These stories don't end just because you stop playing, just because you close your eyes, just because you drift off to sleep. And maybe that's comforting, or in a way. Maybe it's nice to know that these characters, these stories, these little pieces of meaning will continue. Maybe it's nice to know that Hallownest exists somewhere, in code and pixels and imagination, waiting for anyone who wants to explore it, who wants to discover its secrets, who wants to meet its characters and learn their stories. Maybe it's nice to know that even in a fallen kingdom, even in a world that's ending, there are still stories being told, and still characters living their lives, still meaning being created and discovered and shared. So let these stories carry you towards sleep. Let the characters of Hallownest keep you company in these quiet hours. Let their struggles and triumphs, their failures and successes, their lives and deaths, become a gentle background to your rest. You don't need to remember all their names, don't need to keep track of all their stories, don't need to stay awake to hear every detail. Just let them exist. Hey, let them be. Let them tell their stories while you drift away. Think about the night, silent and determined, returning to a kingdom that discarded them. Think about the Hollow Knight, suffering in chains, trying to fulfill an impossible duty. Think about the Pale King, building a kingdom and destroying it in his attempts to save it. Think about the White Lady, bound in her garden, living with the weight of her choices. Think about Hornet, sharp and skilled, protecting ruins because someone has to. Think about Quirrell, finding peace after a lifetime of wandering. Think about the Radiants fighting to be remembered, refusing to fade quietly. Think about the Dreamers, sleeping forever to maintain a failing solution. Think about Elderbug, sitting on his bench, happy to see you return. Think about all the warriors and scholars and shopkeepers and wanderers, all trying to survive, all trying to find meaning, all telling their stories in a fallen kingdom. Or don't think about any of them. Just breathe. Just relax. Just let go. The stories will continue without you. The characters will keep existing. Hallownest will remain, waiting in that space between waking and dreaming, between memory and imagination, between the game and the player. And you can visit any time you want, can explore those ruins, can meet those characters, can discover those stories. But right now, you don't need to do anything. Right now, you can just rest. Let your breathing slow. Let your muscles relax. Let your thoughts drift. The characters of Hallownest have carried you this far, through their stories, through their struggles, through their existence in this beautiful, tragic, haunting world. Now let them carry you the rest of the way, into sleep, into rest, into dreams. Maybe you'll dream of Hallownest tonight. Maybe you'll walk through the city of tears, rain falling eternally. Maybe you'll explore green paths surrounded by plants and life. Maybe you'll descend into Deepnest, facing your fears in the darkness. Maybe you'll climb to the top of the crystal peak, surrounded by light and beauty. Maybe you'll sit on a bench next to Elderbug, watching Dirtmouth come back to life. Maybe you'll stand by the blue lake with Quirrell, feeling at peace. Maybe you'll fight alongside Hornet, protecting something worth protecting. Maybe you'll face the Radiance, light and darkness colliding in a dream. Or maybe you'll dream of something else entirely, something unrelated to Hallownest, something from your own life, your own stories, your own characters. That's fine too. The point isn't to dream of Hollow Knight specifically. The point is to let these stories, these characters, these gentle words help you relax, help you let go, help you drift into whatever dreams come naturally. The point is to use this time, these quiet hours, to rest, to recover, to let your mind and body do what they need to do. Thank you for spending this time with the characters of Hallownest. Thank you for listening to their stories, for caring about their struggles, for letting them exist in your thoughts for a while. Thank you for being here, for trusting these words to carry you towards sleep, for allowing yourself to rest. The characters of Hallownest would thank you too, if they could, for remembering them, for keeping their stories alive, for caring about a fallen kingdom and the people who lived there. Sleep well, rest deeply, let the stories continue in your dreams or fade into peaceful darkness. Let the characters of Hallownest watch over you as you sleep, as you rest, as you recover from whatever brought you here tonight. Let Elderbug's kindness, Quirrell's peace, Hornet's strength, the Knight's determination, the Hollow Knight's sacrifice, the Pale King's ambition, the White Lady's regret, the Radiance's desperation, the Dreamer's duty, and all the other stories, all the other characters, all the other lives lived in that fallen kingdom become a gentle presence in your rest. You're safe here. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to let go. The stories will continue. The characters will endure. Hallownest will remain, waiting for whenever you want to return, whenever you want to explore, whenever you want to discover more. But right now, in this moment, you don't need to do anything except breathe, relax, and sleep. So do that. Breathe, relax, sleep. Let everything else fade away. Let the characters of Hallownest carry you into dreams, into rest, into the peaceful darkness that comes before morning. The night walks through Hallownest, silent and determined. The Hollow Knight suffers in their chains, waiting for release. The Pale King sits on his throne, crown fallen, kingdom lost. The White Lady remains bound in her garden, roots holding her in place. Hornet watches from the shadows, needle ready, always vigilant. Quirrell sits by the blue lake, at peace at last. The radiance burns in her prison, light desperate and fading. The dreamers sleep their eternal sleep, seals slowly breaking. Elderbug sits on his bench waiting for travellers, and you, lying here, breathing slowly, letting go, drifting towards sleep, are part of their story now, connected to Hallownest through these quiet hours, through these gentle words, through the act of listening and caring and remembering. Rest now. Sleep now. Let the characters continue their stories while you rest. Let Hallownest exist in that space between waking and dreaming, between memory and imagination, between the game and the player. Let yourself exist in that space too, that peaceful place where stories and sleep meet, where words become dreams, where consciousness fades into rest. You've heard the stories, you've met the characters, you've walked through Hallownest in your mind. Now let it all fade. Let it all become background. Let it all carry you gently into sleep. The kingdom falls. The kingdom rises. The kingdom exists in eternal twilight, neither fully alive nor fully dead, maintained by the stories told about it, by the players who explore it, by the characters who inhabit it, and tonight you're part of that story, part of that kingdom, part of that eternal moment between ending and beginning. So rest in that moment, sleep in that space, Well, let Hallownest hold you gently as you drift away, as you let go, as you finally peacefully fall asleep. Good night. Sleep well. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring about these characters, these stories, this fallen kingdom. May your dreams be peaceful, whether they're filled with Hallownest or something else entirely. May your rest be deep and restorative. May you wake feeling better than when you lay down. And may the characters of Hallownest, in whatever way they exist, watch over you as you sleep, as you rest, as you recover. The night continues their journey. The Hollow Knight waits in chains. The Pale King's legacy crumbles. The White Lady remains bound. Hornet watches and protects. Quirrell finds his peace. The radiance burns and fades. The dreamers sleep and dream. Elderbug sits and waits. And you, finally, gratefully, peacefully, sleep. The stories continue. The kingdom endures. And you rest. Carried by words and characters and the gentle pull of sleep, into darkness, into dreams, into the peaceful nothing that comes before morning. Sleep now, rest now, let go now. Everything else can wait. Everything else will be there when you wake. But right now, in this moment, there's only sleep, only rest. Only the gentle darkness that holds you safe as you drift away, as you let go, as you finally, peacefully, completely fall asleep. But before you drift completely away, let's spend a little more time with some of the characters we haven't fully explored yet, the ones whose stories deserve more attention, whose lives add even more depth to Hallownest's tapestry. There are so many voices in this kingdom, so many perspectives, so many ways of understanding what happened and what it all means. Let's talk more about the vessels, about your siblings, about the thousands of children who died in the abyss. When you descend into the abyss with the King's Soul charm, you see them, the broken shells of your siblings, piled on top of each other, climbing over each other, trying desperately to escape. Most of them died there, killed by the void, transformed into empty shells, discarded as failures. But some of them made it out, scattered throughout Hallownest. You find their shells in various locations, in the Green Path, in the City of Tears, in Deepnest, in Kingdom's Edge. Each shell represents a vessel that escaped the abyss, that climbed out like you did, that tried to survive in Hallownest. But unlike you, they didn't make it. They died alone, in various corners of the kingdom, their journeys ending in unmarked deaths. When you use the dream nail on these shells, you sometimes see fragments of thought, tiny pieces of consciousness that suggest these vessels weren't completely empty either. They had something, some spark, some awareness, even if it was just the instinct to survive, to escape, to keep moving forward. Hey, the vessels are perhaps the most tragic characters in Hallownest because they were never meant to be characters at all. They were meant to be tools, empty containers, beings without thought or feeling or identity. But the game suggests, through environmental storytelling and subtle details, that true emptiness was impossible. Every vessel had something, even if it was just the will to climb, the instinct to survive, the tiny spark that made them individuals rather than identical empty shells. The Pale King's plan failed not because he didn't try hard enough, not because he didn't sacrifice enough, but because what he was trying to create was fundamentally impossible. You can't create a being that's alive but not alive, conscious but not conscious, capable of action but incapable of thought. The vessels were doomed from the moment of their creation, not because they were weak or flawed, but because the concept itself was contradictory. And yet, here you are, the knight, a vessel who escaped, who survived, who returned. What makes you different from your siblings? Why did you survive when they didn't? The game never answers this directly, but it suggests possibilities. Maybe you were stronger, more determined, more capable. Maybe you were luckier, happened to be in the right place at the right time. Maybe you were actually more flawed, more filled with thought and will, which gave you the drive to survive that your emptier siblings lacked. Maybe there's no reason at all, no explanation, just random chance in a world that doesn't care about fairness or meaning. The ambiguity is intentional, leaving you to decide what your survival means, what your existence represents, what your purpose is beyond the one the Pale King intended. Let's talk about the Pale King's relationship with the Hollow Knight, about the bond that formed between them, despite the Pale King's intentions. There's a memory you can access in the White Palace, a scene showing the Pale King and the Hollow Knight when the Hollow Knight was young. The Pale King is leading the Hollow Knight away, and the young vessel looks back just once at the abyss where their siblings died. That single look, that moment of awareness, that tiny expression of something that might be curiosity or grief or connection, that was the flaw. That was the crack in the emptiness that the Radiance would eventually exploit. The Pale King saw it. Must have known in that moment that his plan was flawed, that this vessel wasn't truly hollow. But he continued anyway, either because he had no other options, or because he couldn't bear to throw away another child, or because he convinced himself that this tiny flaw wouldn't matter. The Pale King raised the Hollow Knight, trained them, spent time with them, and in that time, despite his best efforts to remain distant, to treat the Hollow Knight as a tool rather than a child, a bond formed. The Hollow Knight looked up to the Pale King, saw him as a father, developed an idea instilled, the concept that would doom them and the kingdom they were meant to save. The tragedy of the Pale King and the Hollow Knight is that their relationship, the bond between father and child, was the very thing that destroyed the plan. If the Pale King had been crueler, more distant, more willing to treat the Hollow Knight as nothing but a container, maybe the plan would have worked. But he couldn't do that, or didn't do that, and the Hollow Knight became a person, a being with thoughts and feelings, a child who loved their father, and that love, that connection, that tiny human element in a plan designed to eliminate humanity, was what failed. The Pale King's love for his kingdom led him to commit atrocities. His inability to completely suppress his love for his child led those atrocities to fail. It's a cycle of love and destruction, of good intentions leading to terrible outcomes, of the impossibility of separating emotion from action, of the way relationships shape us even when we're trying to remain detached. Let's talk about Hera and Hornet, about the bargain that created a daughter and sealed a mother away. Hera was the queen of Deepnest, a kingdom that existed independently of Hallownest, that maintained its own culture and identity even after the Pale King's rise. Deepnest is dark, dangerous, filled with spiders and other creatures that predate the Pale King civilization. It's a place that remembers what the world was like before the Pale King brought light and thought and structure. Hera ruled this kingdom, maintained its independence, and when the Pale King came asking for dreamers, she saw an opportunity. She would give up her life, seal herself in eternal sleep, but only if the Pale King gave her an heir. This wasn't about love or attraction. This was politics. A transaction between rulers, a way for Hera to ensure that Deepnest's legacy would continue even after she was gone. The Pale King agreed, desperate for dreamers, willing to make any bargain to save his kingdom, and so Hornet was born, a child of two kingdoms, carrying the blood of both the Pale King and the Beast. Hera never got to raise Hornet, never got to see her daughter grow up, never got to teach her about Deepnest or pass on the crown. She sealed herself away when Hornet was still young, choosing duty and legacy over personal experience. It's unclear who raised Hornet after Hera became a dreamer. Was it the Pale King, the White Lady, someone in Deepnest? The game doesn't say, leaving Hornet's childhood a mystery. But we know that Hornet grew up knowing about both her parents, understanding her role as a bridge between kingdoms, aware of the sacrifice her mother made. When you kill Hera to break her seal, Hornet doesn't try to stop you. She knows it's necessary, knows that the dreamer's sacrifice has run its course, knows that a new solution is needed. But that doesn't make it easy, doesn't erase the weight of killing your own mother, even if that mother has been asleep for years, even if that death serves a greater purpose. Hornet's relationship with the Knight is complicated by their shared parentage. You're both children of the Pale King, both created for purposes beyond your control, both shaped by decisions made before you were born. But you're fundamentally different. Hornet is alive, has a voice, has agency, has a future. You're void, silent, potentially empty, created to be a tool. Hornet seems to feel something toward you. Maybe kinship, maybe pity, maybe respect, maybe all of these things. She tests you, helps you, watches over you, and in some endings, sacrifices herself alongside you. The relationship between Hornet and the Knight is never explicitly defined. It's never spelled out in dialogue or cutscenes. It exists in the spaces between encounters, in the way Hornet appears at crucial moments, in the choices she makes, in the way she treats you differently from other bugs in Hallownest. She sees you as something more than just another vessel, something more than just a tool. She sees you as a sibling, maybe, or at least as someone worthy of respect and attention. Let's talk about the Radiance's perspective, about what it means to be a forgotten god. Before the Pale King arrived, the Radiance was worshipped by the Moth tribe. She gave them light, purpose, identity. They built their culture around her, devoted their lives to her, found meaning in her existence. Then the Pale King came, offering something different. Expanded minds, civilization, progress. The Moths turned away from the Radiance, forgot her, let her fade from memory. For a god, being forgotten is death. Gods exist through worship, through belief, through the thoughts and devotion of their followers. When the Moths stopped worshipping the Radiance, stopped thinking about her, stopped passing down her stories, she began to fade. The infection is her desperate attempt to survive, to force her way back into the minds that abandoned her, to exist through any means necessary, even if those means cause suffering and destruction. From the Radiance's perspective, she's not the villain. She's the victim, the one who was abandoned, the one who was erased, the one fighting for survival against a usurper who stole her followers. The Pale King came and took what was hers, expanded minds that were already hers, claimed worship that belonged to her. The infection is reclamation, justice, survival. It's violent and destructive, yes, but what choice did she have? Fade quietly into nothing, accept erasure, let herself be forgotten, or fight back, reclaim what was taken, Force her way back into existence, even if it means destroying the kingdom that replaced her. The Radiants chose to fight, chose survival over peaceful death, chose to be remembered even if that memory is wrapped in infection and madness. It's not a heroic choice, but it's an understandable one, a desperate one. The choice of a being facing extinction and refusing to go quietly. The conflict between the Pale King and the Radiants is fundamentally about memory and worship, about who gets to exist in the minds of Hallownest's bugs, about the violence of cultural change and the cost of progress. The Pale King brought civilization, but that civilization required the erasure of what came before. The Radiance represents that erased past, the forgotten gods, the cultures that were replaced, the beliefs that were abandoned. Neither the Pale King nor the Radiance is purely good or purely evil. They're both trying to survive, both trying to maintain their existence, as both willing to cause immense suffering to achieve their goals. The tragedy is that their conflict destroys everyone caught between them. All the ordinary bugs who just wanted to live their lives, who got caught up in a war between gods and kings that they never asked to be part of. Let's talk about the dreamers in more depth, about what they gave up and what they gained. Lurien the Watcher's devotion to the Pale King is absolute, bordering on obsessive. His spire is positioned to overlook the White Palace, his telescopes all pointed toward the king's residence. Lurien's journals and dialogue suggest that his devotion went beyond simple loyalty, beyond duty or respect. He loved the Pale King, whether that love was romantic or platonic or something else entirely. When the Pale King asked him to become a dreamer, Lurien saw it as the ultimate expression of his devotion, the greatest service he could provide. He sealed himself away not with reluctance or resignation, but with joy, with pride, with the satisfaction of knowing he was doing exactly what his king needed. Lurien's butler and retainers also chose to sleep, to wait with him, to serve even in dreams. Their loyalty to Lurien mirrored Lurien's loyalty to the Pale King, creating a chain of devotion that extended from the king down through his followers. When you kill Lurien, you're not just breaking a seal, you're ending a vigil of love, or destroying the last service of someone who devoted their entire existence to a king who's already dead. Monomon the teacher's approach to becoming a dreamer was completely different. She didn't do it out of love or devotion. She did it because it was necessary, because the math worked out, because sealing the Hollow Night required 3 dreamers and she was willing to be one of them. Monomon was a scholar, someone who valued knowledge and logic above emotion. She understood the Pale King's plan, saw its flaws, but also recognized that it was the best option available. So she agreed, made her preparations, and sealed herself away with the same methodical approach she brought to all her research. But Monomon also showed compassion in her preparations. She gave Quirrell the mask that would protect him from the infection and make him forget, sparing him from the knowledge that his teacher would need to die, and sparing him from years of grief and anticipation. That act of kindness, that decision to protect her student from pain, shows that Monomon's logical approach didn't mean she lacked emotion or care. She just expressed it differently, through practical actions rather than declarations of feeling. Hera the Beast Bargain was the most transactional of the 3 dreamers. She didn't become a dreamer out of devotion, or duty, or logical acceptance. She did it because the Pale King offered her something she wanted, a child, an heir, a continuation of Deepness' legacy. Hera was a queen, a ruler, someone who thought in terms of kingdoms and dynasties and political maneuvering. She saw the Pale King's desperation and used it to secure her kingdom's future. The bargain was cold, calculated, practical, but it was also wrapped in maternal love, in the desire to create something that would outlast her, near in the hope that Hornet would carry both kingdoms forward. Hera never got to see if that hope was fulfilled, never got to know what kind of person Hornet became, never got to see her daughter grow into a warrior and protector. She sealed herself away, trusting that the bargain was worth it, that Hornet's existence justified her eternal sleep, that Deepness' legacy would continue through her daughter. The three dreamers represent three different relationships with sacrifice: devotion, logic, and bargaining. Together they maintained the seal on the Hollow Knight's prison, kept the infection contained for years, bought Hallownest time even though that time ultimately wasn't enough. Their deaths are necessary for progress, for reaching the Hollow Knight, for attempting a new solution. But their deaths are also tragic, the ending of three different stories of sacrifice and service, the destruction of three different forms of dedication. When you kill the dreamers, you're not doing something evil, but you're not doing something purely good either. You're making a choice, deciding that their sacrifice has run its course, that a new approach is needed, that the time they bought has been spent. It's a necessary choice, but it's also a heavy one. The weight of ending three lives that were already given in service to a greater good. Let's talk about some of the minor characters in more depth, the ones whose stories are easy to miss but add so much texture to Hallownest. Salubra is a charm collector who lives in the Forgotten Crossroads, excited to meet anyone interested in charms, lonely after years of isolation. She offers you a charm notch if you greet her, just for being friendly, just for acknowledging her existence. Salubra's dialogue reveals her loneliness, her excitement at having someone to talk to, her passion for charms and their history. She's not involved in grand conflicts or ancient tragedies. She's just a bug who loves charms, who's been alone for too long, who's grateful for any company. Salubra represents the ordinary citizens of Hallownest, the ones who had hobbies and interests and lives that weren't defined by the infection or the Pale King's plans. She's a reminder that Hallownest was a real place with real people, not just a backdrop for epic conflicts. Leg-Eater is a strange bug who lives in the fungal wastes, and selling fragile charms that break when you die but are more powerful than their regular versions. He's rude, dismissive, calls you names, but he's also honest about what he's selling. The fragile charms are a risk-reward system, offering more power at the cost of permanent loss if you fail. Leg-Eater's relationship with Divine of the Grim Troop is bizarre and uncomfortable. Divine eats him, or at least appears to, and he seems to enjoy it, speaking of her with a mixture of fear and affection. It's one of the stranger relationships in Hallownest, never fully explained, left ambiguous and weird. Leg-Eater also has a connection to the Pale King's palace, suggesting he might have been someone important once before the fall, before he ended up in the fungal waste selling fragile charms and getting eaten by Divine. Gigi is a bug who lives in Dirtmouth, offering to summon your shade for a fee if you don't want to travel back to where you died. Here your Gigi speaks of spirits and the space between life and death, treating shade summoning as a spiritual practice rather than just a service. Gigi's dialogue suggests a deeper understanding of death and void, a connection to forces beyond the physical world. Gigi is kind, helpful, never judgmental about how many times you've died or how much help you need. In a game that can be punishingly difficult, Gigi offers a small mercy, a way to recover from mistakes without as much penalty, a reminder that help is available if you need it. The mask maker lives in Deepnest, surrounded by masks speaking in riddles about identity and faces and the truth beneath appearances. The mask maker sees through masks, understands that what bugs show on the surface isn't always what they are underneath. The mask maker's dialogue is cryptic, philosophical, treating masks as both literal objects and metaphors for identity. When you speak to the mask maker, they comment on your mask, on what it hides, on what you are beneath it. The mask maker seems to understand that you're a vessel, that your mask is hiding void, that your identity is more complex than your appearance suggests. The mask maker's shop sells mask shards, pieces that increase your health. But the real value of the mask maker is their perspective, their understanding that everyone in Hallownest is wearing masks, hiding their true selves, presenting faces that might not match their reality. Millabelle is a banker in the City of Tears who offers to hold your geo for safekeeping. She's friendly, professional, trustworthy, until you deposit too much money. Then Millabelle steals everything and flees to the pleasure house, where you can find her and recover your geo by hitting her repeatedly until she gives it all back. Millabelle's betrayal is one of the game's darker jokes, a reminder that not everyone in Hallownest is trustworthy, that some bugs are just looking out for themselves, that kindness and professionalism can be masks for greed. After you recover your geo, Millabelle stays in the pleasure house, defeated and ashamed, her banking career over, her reputation destroyed. It's a small story of crime and consequence, of greed leading to downfall, of the way trust can be broken, and the difficulty of recovering from that break. Marissa is a ghost in the pleasure house, a singer whose voice you can hear echoing through the empty halls. She's already dead, just a spirit lingering in a place that used to be full of life and music. When you use the dream nail on Marissa, she doesn't speak in words, just musical notes, her identity so tied to singing that even in death, even as a ghost, she expresses herself through music. Marissa represents all the artists and performers of Hallownest, the ones who brought beauty and culture to the kingdom, who created art in a world that was already ending. Her ghost singing in an empty pleasure house is one of the most melancholy images in the game, a reminder of what Hallownest lost, of the culture and beauty that died along with the kingdom. Revek is the gatekeeper in the City of Tears, standing by the entrance to the city, speaking of the Pale King's greatness, maintaining his post even though the king is dead and the city is dying. Revek is loyal, dedicated, and still believing in the kingdom's glory even as everything falls apart around him. His dialogue reveals his devotion to the Pale King, his pride in serving the kingdom, his refusal to abandon his duty even when that duty has lost its meaning. Revek represents all the ordinary servants and workers of Hallownest, the ones who kept the kingdom functioning, who believed in its purpose, who maintained their roles even as the world ended. He's not a warrior or a scholar or a ruler. He's just a gatekeeper doing his job, believing in something that's already gone. The Grubfather is a bug in the Forgotten Crossroads who asks you to rescue his children, the grubs trapped in jars throughout Hallownest. As you rescue grubs and return them to the Grubfather, he's grateful, happy, excited to see his children again. He gives you rewards for rescuing grubs, thanks you for your help, seems like a loving father reunited with his family. But if you rescue all the grubs and return later, you find the Grubfather transformed, bloated, surrounded by empty cocoons. The grubs are gone, apparently consumed by their father, transformed into something else. It's disturbing, uncomfortable, never fully explained. Was the grub father always planning to eat his children? Is this a natural part of grub life cycle? Did something go wrong? The game doesn't say, leaving the grub father's story ambiguous and unsettling. A reminder that not all rescues have happy endings, that nature can be cruel and strange, that parental love can take forms that seem monstrous to outside observers. Bardoon is an ancient caterpillar in Kingdom's Edge, one of the oldest beings in Hallownest, old enough to remember when the Pale King was still a worm. Bardoon speaks slowly, thoughtfully, sharing knowledge about Hallownest's history, about the Pale King's transformation, about the nature of worms and higher beings. Bardoon is not involved in current conflicts, not concerned with the infection or the kingdom's fall. Bardoon simply exists, ancient and patient, watching time pass, sharing knowledge with anyone curious enough to listen. Bardoon represents deep time, the perspective that comes from living through ages, the understanding that kingdoms rise and fall but the world continues. Bardoon was here before Hallownest and will be hereafter, unchanged, patient, eternal. The Moss Prophet is a bug in the fungal wastes who worships the infection, seeing the radiance's light as divine, treating the plague as salvation rather than destruction. The Moss Prophet speaks of the infection with reverence, calls it a gift, believes that being infected is transcendence rather than death. The Moss Prophet's perspective is disturbing because it's sincere. This isn't a bug who's been driven mad by infection. This is a bug who genuinely believes the infection is good, who sees the radiance's light as holy, who thinks that losing your mind to the plague is a form of enlightenment. The Moss Prophet represents the danger of faith without questioning, of seeing destruction as salvation, of finding meaning in suffering. The Moss Prophet is a reminder that not everyone in Hallownest sees the infection as a tragedy, that some bugs welcomed it, embraced it, found purpose in the very thing that destroyed the kingdom. Willow is a bug who lives in the Queen's station, asking you to bring her delicate flowers from the Queen's gardens. She's gentle, kind, appreciative of beauty in a world that's lost most of its beauty. Willow doesn't offer rewards or quests or important information. She just wants flowers, wants to see something beautiful, wants a small moment of joy in a dying kingdom. Willow represents the importance of small pleasures, of finding beauty even in ruins, of maintaining appreciation for gentle things even when everything is falling apart. So bringing Willow flowers doesn't save Hallownest, doesn't advance your quest, doesn't unlock powerful abilities. It's just a kind thing to do, a small act of compassion in a world that desperately needs compassion. Eternal Emilitia is a bug who guards the graves in the resting grounds, speaking of love and loss, of the bugs buried there, of the importance of remembering the dead. Emilitia is devoted to her duty, maintaining the graves, honouring the dead, ensuring that those who died are not forgotten. Emilitia speaks of a love she lost, of someone buried in the resting grounds, of grief that has become eternal. She's not trying to move on, not trying to forget, not trying to heal. She's chosen to stay with her grief, to make it her purpose, to turn her loss into eternal devotion. Emilitia represents the way some people respond to grief, by making it central to their identity, by building their lives around loss, by choosing to remember rather than move forward. It's not presented as healthy or unhealthy, just as a choice, a way of being, a form of love that continues beyond death. Let's talk about Zim, the Grey Mourner, one of the 5 great knights, a warrior from a foreign land who fell in love with the daughter of the traitor lord. Zima's story is told through her quest, where she asks you to deliver a delicate flower to her lover's grave in the Queen's gardens. The flower is incredibly fragile, breaking if you take damage or use a stag station, requiring you to travel carefully through dangerous areas. The journey with the flower is one of the most tense and careful sequences in the game, forcing you to slow down, to be cautious, to treat this delivery with the respect and care it deserves. When you finally deliver the flower to the grave, Zema thanks you, speaks of her lost love, of the mantis who died, and of the grief that has defined her existence since. Zema and her lover's relationship was doubly forbidden. A foreign knight in love with the child of the traitor lord, the very mantis who broke from the tribe and chose infection over honour. Two different worlds, two different cultures, and a bond that the traitor lord himself would never have accepted. But they loved each other anyway, and when that love was lost, Zema's grief became eternal. She's called the Grey Mourner because mourning is now her identity, her purpose, her entire existence. She can't deliver the flower herself, can't make the journey, can't face the grave directly. She needs someone else to do it, to carry her love and grief to the place where her lover rests. Zema's story is about love that transcends death, about grief that becomes identity, about the way loss can define us. She's one of the 5 great knights, a warrior who served the Pale King, who fought for Hallownest, who was part of the kingdom's greatest defenders. But her story isn't about battles or duty or service. It's about love and loss, about a relationship that mattered more than kingdoms or conflicts, about the way personal grief can be more significant than grand historical events. Zema represents all the people in Hallownest who lost loved ones, who carry grief as a constant companion, who find meaning in remembering rather than moving forward. Yeah, let's talk about Ismay, another of the 5 great knights, whose story is told through environmental details and item descriptions rather than direct dialogue. Isma was a knight who served the Pale King, who fought to protect Hallownest, who died in service to the kingdom. Her body, or what remains of it, is in Isma's grove, surrounded by acidic water that she apparently created. The acid serves as a defence, protecting the royal waterways, making it harder for enemies to navigate. Isma's Tear. The item you find in her grove allows you to swim through acid without taking damage, suggesting that Isma herself had this ability, that she used her power to create defences for Hallownest. Isma's story is brief, told mostly through implication and environmental storytelling. She was a knight, she served, she died, and her death became part of Hallownest's defences. Her body transformed into something useful, her power continuing to protect the kingdom even after her death. Isma represents the ultimate sacrifice, the complete giving of self to a cause, the transformation of death into continued service. Hegemol is the most mysterious of the 5 great knights, known primarily through the fact that his armour was stolen. A maggot found Hegemol's armour and put it on, becoming the false knight you encounter early in the Forgotten Crossroads. The maggot's motive wasn't ego or glory. They wore the armour to protect their smaller siblings, using the imposing shell of a great knight to stand guard over creatures far weaker than themselves. There's something heartbreaking in that, a terrified maggot wearing stolen armour, trying to be something enormous and powerful for the sake of those they loved. What happened to Hegemol himself is never explained. Did the maggot take the armour from a corpse? Did they stumble upon it abandoned? Did something more sinister occur? The game doesn't say, leaving Hegemon's fate ambiguous. The false knight is weak and frightened, using the armour to appear stronger than they actually are. When you defeat the false knight, the maggot crawls out of the armour, terrified and pathetic, the illusion shattered. Later you can fight the failed champion, a dream version of the false knight that represents the powerful knight the maggot pretended to be. Hegemon's story, or the lack of it, is about identity and imposture, about the gap between appearance and reality, about how armour and titles don't make someone a knight, but also about how small, frightened creatures will sometimes reach for the impossible to protect the ones they love. The 5 great knights together represent the Pale King's military might, the warriors who defended Hallownest, who served with honour and skill. But their stories are all about loss and sacrifice, about service that led to death or grief or disappearance. Dung Defender is the only one still alive and active, still maintaining his post, still loyal to a dead king. Isma died and became part of the kingdom's defences. Zema survived but lost her love and became defined by grief. Hegemol disappeared, his armour stolen, his fate unknown, and Drya fell, defending the Queen's gardens, her sacrifice largely unremembered, her death occurring far from anyone who might have honoured it. The 5 great knights represent the best of Hallownest, and their collective fate shows that even the best wasn't enough. That service and skill and dedication couldn't save the kingdom, that sometimes everything you give still isn't sufficient. Let's talk about the Nail Masters in more depth, about Sly's students and what they represent. Shio, Oro and Matto were all trained by Sly. All mastered nail combat, all became skilled warriors. But after their training, they went separate ways, chose different paths, found different meanings in their skills. Shio lives in Greenpath, having given up combat to pursue painting. His house is filled with paintings, including one of the Nailmaster trio in their youth, showing them together before they separated. Sheo speaks of finding peace in art, of discovering that there's more to life than combat, of the joy of creating rather than destroying. He still remembers his nail training, still respects his master and his brothers, but he's moved beyond that part of his life. If you spare the nailsmith, yes, Sheo and the nailsmith end up together, with the nailsmith learning painting from Sheo, finding new purpose in art after believing his life's work was complete. Sheo represents the path of leaving violence behind, of finding new purposes, of the courage it takes to change direction and pursue something completely different. Oro lives by Kingdom's Edge, still training, still fighting, still dedicated to perfecting his combat skills. He's harsh, demanding, not particularly friendly. Oro charges you Geo to teach you his nail art, treating the teaching as a transaction rather than a gift. Oro represents the path of continued dedication, of never stopping, of pursuing mastery as a lifelong goal. He hasn't moved beyond combat like Shio has. Combat is still his purpose, his identity, his reason for existing. Oro is not presented as wrong for this choice, just different. Some people find peace in leaving their past behind. Others find peace in continuing, in deepening their commitment, in pursuing the same goal with increasing focus and skill. Matto lives in the Howling Cliffs, maintaining his practice, honouring his master's teachings, finding balance between Shio's peace and Oro's intensity. Matto is friendly, welcoming, happy to teach you his nail art without charging Geo. He speaks of his brothers with affection, misses them, wishes they were still together, Matto represents the middle path, the balance between moving on and staying committed, between peace and intensity, between past and future. He's maintained his skills but isn't obsessed with them. He honours his training but isn't defined by it. He's found a way to be a warrior without making combat his entire identity. The three Nail Masters together show different ways of relating to your past, to your training, to your identity. Sheo left it behind and found something new. Oro doubled down and made it everything. Matto found balance and maintained connection. And none of these paths is presented as the right one. They're just different choices, different ways of being, different responses to the question of what to do after you've mastered something. The Nail Master's story is about the paths that open up after achievement, about the choices you make when you've reached your goal, about the different ways people find meaning in their skills and their past. Let's talk about the Colosseum of Fools, about the warriors who fight there, about what that place represents in Hallownest. The Colosseum is run by the Fool, a bug who organises fights for entertainment and glory, who maintains this arena even as the kingdom falls. The warriors who fight in the Colosseum are seeking glory, testing themselves, proving their strength. Some, like Tizo, die in the attempt. Others, like Zote, somehow survive despite being completely incompetent. The Colosseum represents the warrior culture that existed in Hallownest. The bugs who define themselves through combat, who found meaning in testing their skills against others. It's not presented as noble or ignoble, just as a thing that exists, a place where bugs go to fight and die, and occasionally achieve glory. The Colosseum is one of the few places in Hallownest that's still functioning, still serving its purpose, still drawing participants. The infection hasn't stopped the fights, hasn't closed the arena, hasn't ended the pursuit of glory through combat. In a way, the Colosseum is more honest than many other parts of Hallownest. It's always been about violence and death and the pursuit of glory. The kingdom's fall hasn't changed that, hasn't made it worse, hasn't corrupted its purpose. The Colosseum was always what it is, and it continues being that thing even as everything else crumbles. Let's talk about the various merchants and shopkeepers throughout Hallownest, about the economy that somehow still functions in a dying kingdom. Sly sells items and charms, maintaining his shop even though there are fewer and fewer customers. Iselda sells maps and cartography supplies, supporting her husband's work. Salubra sells charms, excited to meet anyone interested in her collection. Legita sells fragile charms, rude but honest about what he's offering. The relic seeker Lem buys artifacts, preserving history through commerce. These merchants represent the continuation of normal life, the persistence of economy and trade even in apocalyptic circumstances. They're not heroes or villains, not involved in grand conflicts or ancient tragedies. They're just people trying to make a living, trying to maintain their businesses, trying to find purpose in commerce and trade. The fact that they're still operating, still buying and selling, still maintaining shops, suggests that Hallownest isn't completely dead, that some form of society still exists, that bugs still need goods and services even in a fallen kingdom. Let's talk about the Dream Warriors, these spirits of dead bugs you can fight using the Dream Nail. These warriors died throughout Hallownest history, and their spirits remain, still fighting, still maintaining their posts, still pursuing their purposes even in death. Gorb was a scholar who believed he achieved ascension, who speaks of greatness and transcendence even as a ghost. Mamu was a young caterpillar, a playful and energetic even in death. No Eyes was a bug who collected the dead, who speaks of loneliness and loss. Elderhu was a warrior who failed to protect someone, who carries that failure into death. Galen was a warrior who sought glory, who remains proud even as a spirit. Markoth was a shield master, still fighting with honour and skill. Zero was a bug who felt betrayed by the Pale King, whose anger persists beyond death. These dream warriors represent different relationships with death, different ways of persisting as spirits, different reasons for remaining rather than moving on. Some are proud, some are angry, some are playful, some are sad, but all of them are still here, still fighting, still existing in some form even though their physical bodies are gone. The Dream Warriors show that death in Hallownest isn't always final, that spirits can persist, that purpose and emotion can outlast physical existence. Let's talk about the various bosses throughout Hallownest, about what they represent and why they fight you. The False Knight is a maggot in stolen armour, fighting not for glory but out of a desperate need to protect their smaller siblings, a parent in borrowed greatness, terrified and determined. The Mantis Lords are testing your strength, fighting with honour and respect. The Soul Master is a scholar driven mad by his experiments, fighting because he's lost himself to obsession. Nosk is a predator, fighting because that's what predators do. The Traitor Lord is infected and exiled, fighting with rage and corruption. Hornet is testing you, making sure you're strong enough for what lies ahead. The Hollow Knight is suffering in chains, fighting because they're infected and in pain. The Radiance is fighting for survival, for memory, for the right to exist. Each boss has their own reasons for fighting, their own motivations, their own stories. They're not just obstacles or challenges, they're characters with purposes, with histories, with reasons for being where they are and doing what they do. The beauty of Hollow Knight is that it treats every character, even bosses, even enemies, as beings with their own existence, their own reasons, their own place in the world. You're not fighting evil for the sake of fighting evil. You're navigating a complex world where everyone has motivations, where conflicts arise from competing needs and desires, where violence is often tragic rather than heroic. When you defeat a boss, you're not necessarily doing something good. You're just removing an obstacle, ending a life, making a choice that serves your purpose even if it costs someone else theirs. The game trusts you to think about these things, to consider what your actions mean, to recognize that your journey through Hallownest leaves a trail of death and destruction, even if your ultimate goal might be noble. As you lie here tonight, letting these stories wash over you, letting sleep come closer, think about how all these characters connect, how their stories interweave, how they create a tapestry of life and death and meaning in a fallen kingdom. The Pale King created vessels, and one of those vessels is you. The White Lady participated in that creation, and now lives with the guilt. The Hollow Knight was chosen and failed. Hornet was born from a bargain and now protects the ruins. The Radiance was forgotten and fought back. The Dreamers sealed themselves away to maintain a failing solution. Quirrell wandered and found peace. The Mantis Lords maintained their honour. Dung Defender kept his post. The Nail Masters found different paths. Elderbug waited on his bench, and hundreds of other characters, major and minor, lived their lives, made their choices, told their stories in this kingdom that rose and fell and now exists in twilight. Every character in Hallownest matters. Every story contributes to the whole. Every life, no matter how brief or small, adds something to the kingdom's history. The game never forces you to care about these characters, never makes their stories mandatory, never requires you to engage with their depth. But if you choose to care, If you choose to explore, if you choose to pay attention, Hallownest reveals itself as a place filled with people, with stories, with meaning. It's not just a setting for your adventure. It's a world that existed before you arrived and will continue in some form after you leave. A place where characters have their own lives and purposes independent of your journey. And maybe that's the most important thing to take from all these stories, from all these characters, from all these lives lived in a fallen kingdom. People matter. Stories matter. Even in a world that's ending, even in a kingdom that's already dead, even in circumstances that seem hopeless, more individual lives have meaning, individual choices have weight, individual stories deserve to be told and heard and remembered. Hallownest is dying, but it's not dead yet. Characters still live there, still pursue their purposes, still find meaning in their existence. And as long as someone remembers, as long as someone cares, as long as someone tells these stories, Hallownest continues to exist, continues to matter, continues to be more than just ruins and infection and tragedy. So as you drift towards sleep, as your breathing slows, as your body relaxes, carry these characters with you. Carry their stories, their struggles, their small victories and large defeats. Carry the knowledge that even in darkness, even in endings, even in loss, there are still stories being told, still lives being lived, still meaning being created. Hallownest is a fallen kingdom, but it's also a testament to persistence, to the way life continues even in impossible circumstances, to the importance of remembering and honouring the stories of those who came before. Rest now. Sleep now. Let the characters of Hallownest keep their vigil while you rest. Let their stories continue in whatever form stories continue when no one is actively listening. Let yourself be carried by these words, these lives, these small pieces of a larger whole, into sleep, into dreams, into the peaceful darkness that comes before morning. You've walked through Hallownest tonight, met its characters, near heard their stories. Now let it all fade into background, into the gentle static of approaching sleep, into the quiet that comes when words stop and rest begins. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring about these characters, these stories, this fallen kingdom. May your sleep be deep and peaceful. May your dreams be gentle. May you wake feeling rested and restored. And may the characters of Hallownest, in whatever way they exist, in whatever space between game and imagination and memory, continue their stories, continue their vigils, continue their existence in that beautiful, tragic, haunting world. The night walks through darkness. The hollow knight suffers and waits. The Pale King's legacy crumbles. The White Lady remains bound. Hornet watches and protects. The radiance burns and fades. The dreamers sleep their eternal sleep. Quirrell sits by the lake. The Mantis Lords maintain their honour. Dung Defender keeps his post. Elderbug waits on his bench. And you, finally, peacefully, completely, sleep. The stories continue, the kingdom endures, and you rest, carried by words and characters and the gentle pull of sleep, into darkness, into dreams, into the peaceful nothing that holds you safe until morning comes again. Sleep well, rest deeply, let go completely. Everything else can wait. Everything else will be there when you wake. But right now, there's only sleep, only rest. Only the gentle darkness that carries you away from consciousness, away from thought, away from everything except the peaceful, complete, total rest that your body and mind need. Sleep now, rest now, let go now. The characters of Hallownest will continue their stories, and you will continue yours after you've rested, after you've slept, after you've let these quiet hours restore you. But right now, in this moment, there's only sleep, only rest, only peace, only the gentle, complete, total letting go that carries you finally, peacefully, completely into sleep. Before you drift completely away, remember that every character you've heard about tonight exists in that space between reality and imagination, between code and story, between the game and the player. They're not real in the physical sense, but they're real in the way that stories are real, in the way that characters can matter even when they're fictional, in the way that meaning can be created through narrative and shared experience. Hallownest exists because people care about it, because players explore it, because these stories are told and retold and remembered. The characters live because we let them live, because we engage with their stories, because we find meaning in their struggles and triumphs and failures. And maybe that's true of all stories, all characters, all the narratives we tell ourselves and each other. Yet they exist because we give them space to exist, because we pay attention, because we care. The night is just pixels and code, but the night is also a symbol of determination, of returning to face what created you, of choosing your own purpose. The Hollow Night is just a boss fight, but the Hollow Night is also a tragedy of expectations and impossible duties. The Pale King is just lore and environmental storytelling, but the Pale King is also a cautionary tale about the cost of ambition and the danger of treating people as tools. Every character in Hallownest is both fictional and meaningful, both imaginary and real in the ways that matter. So as you sleep tonight, as you rest and recover, as you let these stories fade into dreams or into peaceful darkness, know that you've participated in keeping these characters alive, in maintaining their existence, in ensuring that their stories continue, by listening, by caring, by spending this time with the characters of Hallownest. You've become part of their story, part of the ongoing narrative that keeps this fallen kingdom alive in memory and imagination. And that's a beautiful thing, a meaningful thing, a reminder that stories matter, that characters matter, that the time we spend with fictional worlds and imaginary people is not wasted but valuable, not escapism but engagement with meaning and narrative and the human need to tell and hear stories. Sleep well, knowing that you've honoured these characters by listening to their stories. Rest deeply, carried by the knowledge that Hallownest continues, that its characters persist, that their stories will be told again to others who need them, who seek them, who find comfort or meaning or beauty in this fallen kingdom and its inhabitants. And when you wake, whenever that is, you'll carry a piece of Hallownest with you, a memory of these characters, a connection to this world that exists between imagination and reality, between the game and the player, between story and experience. That connection is real, is valuable, is worth the time you've spent here tonight. So rest now, sleep now, let go now, and let the characters of Hallownest watch over you as you drift into peaceful, complete, restorative sleep.